You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Okay, we're going to get started tonight, Tuesday, March 18th, 2025, Board of Finance public hearings for the budget year of 25-26. And before we start with the departmental presentations, I'm just going to provide a brief overview of the requests. Total budget requests, including town and board of ed and capital, is $144,457,798, representing an increase request of $9,146,000. After revenues are applied of an estimated $20,211,000, that leaves a net to be raised from taxation of $124,246,000, representing a 6.9% increase in taxation. And the net grand list that we are calculating that from at this point in time is $5.597 billion, an increase of $1.696 billion based on the revaluation. That would equate at this point in time to a mill rate of 22.69. Again, these are requests from the departments. The board will hear the departments tonight and again on Thursday, and then there'll be a Board of Finance meeting on March 31st, which we will then recommend a budget to the RTM. They will deliberate and by committee and such, and then meet on the 14th of May. The Board of Finance will meet on May 19th, and at that time we will finalize the revenues and any allocation of fund balance and determine the mill rate. So with that, we'll begin with the engineering department on page 42.
Use the hand mic?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just trying to unmute. We have our sixth Board of Finance member is out of the country and is attempting to get in by Zoom. I can't unmute her. So, working on that technical difficulty for 1 minute. That's me.
That's you, and over up the three dots.
Unless I didn't mind. Yvette, can you hear me?
I can hear now. You just turned it back on. Thank you.
All right, I think we're good. Okay, sorry about that, John. Welcome.
Thank you. Everyone's doing well. So we'll jump right into the operating budget. Wages and salaries, we have a 1.7% increase. It's contractual. It does not include my salary. Our contract will be up July 1st. So it's why you can see the typical 2+% on that. Then a nominal increase on seasonal and part-time help of $115. That's just keeping with slight increase for part-time paid internship that we usually take in the summer.
Okay, so there's a request of the operating budget for engineering of $515,160, increase of $7,557. Questions from the board? All set. Questions from RTM members or members of the public? Don't forget the capital. Okay, next is your capital request on page, I believe it's 43 of the capital pages. We have, first one is the capital sidewalk and transit amenity program.
Sure. So the last couple of years, We appropriated quite a bit more than this $250,000 we're asking for this year. However, that was with supplemented with ARPA funding. I believe we had about $100,000 out of general taxation the last couple of years. We just finished our ADA right-of-way transition plan, which identifies all areas within town that are deficient in ADA compliance, right? So that actually recommends over a 30-year period about $500,000 a year. We're not looking for that. We understand that's a big number. There's no requirement that we fund it at that level, so it's really what you can do to work towards that ADA compliance. So, but recognizing that $100,000 that we've asked out of general taxation over the last couple of years is not enough to really do what we're looking to accomplish. So we are looking for $250,000 over the next 5 years, each year for the next 5 years, but fiscal 26 would be $250,000.
Okay, and the local traffic authority, LTA projects?
LTA projects, we're keeping this flat at $15,000 for this next year. It's almost acting as a sinking fund at this point. We do have some larger projects that are requested and approved through the LTA. One of them being the rectangular rapid flashing beacons where pedestrian hits a button and the lights flash to alert drivers that someone is trying to cross the street. That's quite a bit more than $15,000. So we actually fiscal 25 and 24 funds we're using for we have a project lined up on Brushy Plain for that. So we are requesting to kind of follow that through that funding through at $15,000 a year.
Okay, and the MS4 compliance retrofit project?
Yep. We currently have funding in this capital funding from this fiscal year. This ask is an out year at 27. We want to use the existing funding up.
Got it.
And the wastewater pollution control facility resiliency phase 3 project, that's also an out year in 27. We currently have phase 2. We got a grant we're hoping to get a grant for phase 2, which is conceptual design to protect the treatment plant from flooding. So phase 3 would come after that, get us through preliminary design so that we can look for some grant funding for the construction.
Thanks, John. Questions from the board on the capital requests? Questions from the public or RTA members? Okay, all set. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Oh, we had another question, John.
Can I use it? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Hartwell from RTM District 5. I wanted to come back to the pedestrian crosswalk things you just mentioned a moment ago. How much are they? Because it sounds like a terrific idea to have a crosswalk that is easily initiated by someone who wants to get across the street.
Thank you. I believe they're over $20,000 a piece, and that's for 2 units, right? So you'd have one on one side of the road, one on the other. We currently have one at the Shoreline Greenway Trail on Pine Orchard Road, if you're wondering what they look like. But they're not appropriated in every situation, but we are looking at, I mentioned Brushy Plain Road, it's right up by Vets Park, where we do have a lot of people and children crossing the road, a lot of busy traffic, heavy volumes, heavy speeds. So in that area, we feel that would be appropriate, but we try to limit it because of the costs, as well as you don't want to get sign fatigue. It kind of depends on the location, but yeah, they're over $20,000 for the system. So
Are they solar powered?
they are solar powered. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? If not, I'll set, John. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next is animal control, with a detail on page 67 and 68. Welcome, Laura.
Hi. How is everybody? Is it on? Okay. You just want me to go through the changes again?
Sure.
Okay. So for Branford warden fees, they're going up because we're increasing the adoption fee. We haven't increased the adoption fee in like 15 years. So more money will come in from that. From donations as well, you'll see a little increase there. The interest income comes from Catherine and Jim. And overall, we're asking for $184 from the town this year. Below at expenditures, you'll see the regular wages and salaries and seasonal and part-time help come from the town's end. You'll also see employment testing. That is increasing because we have to vaccinate and also test staff for rabies and test their titers as well. So costs are going up. And then you will see, where are we? Other purchase services have been there, and we utilize that obviously for other things that we need to purchase, whether it's going to be a washing machine or something else. Right now, we don't expect to have to, but we just wanted to have something in there in case we need it. And then on the other supplies, costs are going up for things that we're purchasing, like paper towels and toilet paper and things like that. So that's why you'll see an increase there. And also with our memberships, conferences, training, meetings.
Okay, so total request is expenditures of $507,538, increase of $14,834. And the amount that comes from taxation on this is $399,738. Or that's what Laura said, an increase of $184. Questions on the operating? Questions from members of the public? Frank, you can step up and you want to use this one. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question. I'm Frank Toohill, RTM First District. So I just wanted to know, what's the balance, Laura, now of your fund balance? The animal control fund balance, please.
I can get you that number off the top of my head. Oh, sorry, Jim.
I think Mr. Finch has it, as usual.
God knows how I even anticipate these questions. But anyway, it's 126,402.
Perfect. Thank you.
And that is unaudited, Frank, just so you know.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, other questions? Okay, Laura, is there any capital?
No.
Good. Thank you. All right, you're all set? Now, wait a minute.
Wait, you got the dog license.
Yeah, how many dog licenses do we have?
Oh, I got it. I have to depend on Lisa for that.
1,283.
Thank you, Lisa.
And that's up from 164 licenses at the same time last year.
Good job, somebody.
That's all right.
It's probably a combination through all the stuff that she's done from marketing it and, the staff going kind of door to door and making sure people are doing that as well.
Good, thank you.
I'd like to take full credit for that, but I can't. So the state, a year and a half ago, is auditing doggy daycares as well as groomers, and they're making sure that the dogs are licensed and that their rabies are up to date. And it helps.
Okay,
because
good.
how do you increase the
All right.
licensing?
Thank you. Okay, next is Public Works, page 39. Welcome, Gary.
Good evening. You're gonna have to give me a second here.
Go ahead.
Okay. The only minor increases in the personnel accounts are, you see anything under
Gary, you have to...
Oh, I'm sorry. Any minor increases are all contractual personnel account. The only larger increase is the overtime. This is, we're asking for $17,500 increase, a 15.9% increase. This is largely because in the past, we've provided trucks and drivers for all the events in town. Police have asked us to provide them. And over the years, it's just steadily going up. And in order to kind of help them secure the intersections and, during parades and events, to ensure some public safety, we've been adding that. So along with a lot of other duties that we do in here in projects that we do, sometimes we have to use a little more overtime when we have absences. Also, we're just kind of looking to make up that extra cost.
Okay. And then non-personnel?
Non-personnel, professional development, we're asking $5,000 increase, that's 40%. That's just due to rising vendor costs. Also providing more training to remain state and OSHA compliant. Also, we're also paying for, this is something added, but it was for hearing tests amongst the whole department. And our largest request here is for the utilities, gas, water, and electricity. We're asking for a $60,000 increase. It's 98%. This is due to regular rate increases and anticipated shortfall due to Connecticut Public Benefit Fund. Also, in the past, I did not account for the increases when we took on the transfer station utilities. So there was a shortfall there.
So Jim, we spent $39,000 in 23-24, and we're looking to spend $121,000 in 25-26. Seems like.
Keep in mind.
Okay.
No, go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say, part of that is the transfer station, and again, I haven't looked at all of the details, but also one of the things that we've seen a big increase is electric rates as well, and we're anticipating those are going to be even higher when we reprice in December.
Okay. No, as long as it's been analyzed, that's fine. That's the request, $121,199 for that line item. Okay. Anything else on the operating, Gary?
Yeah.
Just the safety supplies.
Yeah, one other thing I just want to add about the utilities, as Jim mentioned, this budget now assumed the transfer station, the animal shelter water, again, which is also metered through the transfer station. So that is another building that is included, which going back to that 23 year was not in there, Joe.
Okay, thanks.
The only other notable increase is safety supplies, 11.5%. It's just a rise in costs, in costs and also to meet OSHA standards.
Sure. Okay, so the request for Public Works is a total for the operating of $2,944,654, increase of $121,955. Other questions from the board? Questions from RTM members of the board? Tracy, you want to come up? And why don't you use my mic? Yep.
Tracy Everson, RTM District 5. Gary, can you talk about what the streetlight number is? And I seem to recall that the RTM just recently gave some ARPA funding for streetlights. So would that offset some of this number or not?
We didn't see an increase in the streetlights.
I think you're,
Are you thinking street lining?
street lining.
It says streetlights, isn't it?
No, the ARPA dollars, I think you might be thinking of as a street lining.
No, it says streetlights.
Might be a typo.
You're talking about a line item here in the budget, Tracy?
It says streetlights, 361,019.
Yes.
Is that electric? Is that replacing poles? Is that
Okay, so what's that used for is the
Yeah.
question. That would be the streets lights has to pay the utility for the lights. Do you have that detailed, Gary, or do you want Jim to explain?
I mean, basically, it is for all the lights that are in town, and the streetlights don't run through a meter, so there is a rate that the utility company charges, and so that's so basically, it's mostly the lights from the utility company, and then you have some in downtown center, but most of them are all the utility company lights.
So you pay the utility based on a per pole basis?
Yeah, it's like a flat rate.
Per
Yeah.
watt.
Yeah.
Per watt, they have a flat rate for each lamp.
For each lamp, right.
Depending on the size.
Got it.
When ARPA was mentioned, we did not use ARPA dollars for streetlights. That's where I heard
Yeah.
ARPA. And I was addressing that. We use that for street lining, not street lights,
Okay,
which
all right. And anything else, Tracy?
Can I just, do we use low wattage, the new bulbs? I mean, is there cost savings?
Yeah, they're not our lights. The utility company is the one that lamps them.
we did a retrofit.
Yeah.
We did see a retrofit to the LEDs a few years ago.
Yeah.
Which we did see I think a slight leveling off or reduction at that time. But yes, that has already occurred.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? So now we'll move to capital, which is on the page 69, I believe. It starts on, with ADA ramps, Gary, 20,000.
Yeah, 20,000, that's going to remain flat. DPW apparatus fund, that's going to remain flat. Also, although 2027, 2028, we're going to ask to increase it to 250, and then 2029 and 2030, we're going to increase it to 300. We're hoping to. But for this coming year, it's going to be flat. Downtown center, flat also. Road improvement, resurfacing. We're asking to increase that. No, we're not. That's going to remain flat, 550,000. Seawall repair is flat. Sidewalk replacement is flat. And the town-wide line striping, we're going to skip a few years and possibly request 35,000 2028 to get on more of a schedule.
Okay, so the recap is 20,000 for ADA ramps, 225,000 for apparatus, 25,000 for downtown center maintenance, which is pruning, tree removal, and planting. Road improvement and resurfacing, 550,000, and seawall repair, 45,000. And sidewalk replacement, 65,000, and line striping, 0.
Correct.
Okay. Questions on the capital request? Any questions from the public or RTM members? Nancy?
Nancy McCormick, 6th District, RTM. Just wondering, where are we with ADA compliance for sidewalks around town? And is there a goal to get upwards of 100%?
Yeah, we're working on it. I mean, the ADA ramps, we're asking for $20,000 a year. That's roughly 13 per year we could do. Also, on top of our sidewalk account, which is $65,000, we're trying to upgrade the sidewalks. Along with engineering, they have their own programs too, so we're moving along. I couldn't tell you when we're going to be 100% compliant, but we are working on it.
At 13 a year, it doesn't sound like a whole lot.
It makes a difference.
I'm sure.
It does.
To the people who have them.
What's that?
To the people who have them in compliance. There are so many, I know that in my neighborhood, there's, it's difficult. And some of the areas are done and, you look next door and they're done, and then across the street they're not. So I have people calling me all the time.
I'm pretty sensitive to it because I had a mother that was handicapped.
Yeah.
You couldn't travel around town with in a motorized wheelchair without going detouring a bunch of different ways to get where you needed to go. Use it to find a ramp.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your awareness of that kind of thing. Thanks.
Okay, other questions on Public Works Capital? Okay, all set with that. Gary, we'll move on to Docks and Recreation Facilities on page 48.
Yeah, there are only no increases in minor increase, seasonal and part-time help, 2.3% increase.
So the request is $21,853, increase $181. Questions from the board? Questions from the public, RTM members? All set, Gary. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next up is municipal governments and government buildings, GGB. Page 27. Welcome, Brian.
Hello, everyone. I just have a couple things to talk about. Contractually, our salaries went up 2.5%. Overtime went up 2.5%. Utilities account went up $115,000, which is a 29% increase. And my purchase services went up 6% for almost $25,000.
And non-personnel? I see you did the utilities, 115,000?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, we didn't listen to that. Okay, so the request is $1,314,129, increase of $146,132. Questions from the board on this? Questions from the RTM members? Frank, come on up.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Frank.
Just a question on purchase services. I see it's going up quite a bit. I mean, what do you use that account for, and what's the reason for the increase, please?
I use that account for all my service contracts, my purchasing of all my supplies, lumber, electrical supplies, plumbing supplies, everything that keeps this town, moving forward.
So, excuse me. So you might say that that line is for the raw materials.
Yeah, building repairs.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, sir.
Okay, other questions? If not, we'll move on to the capital on page 87, I believe, capital.
You'll see my first capital is for $24,000. That is to replace just the first floor windows at the Academy building on the green. The second capital request is For $30,000, it's to upgrade the elevator at the town hall. That is, his life expectancy for getting parts is very, very hard. So this is an upgrade. And lastly is the repair of the roof at the town hall for $75,000.
Chairman, what page are we on, please?
We are on page
57.
57, which shows the town hall elevator upgrade for $30,000. Next page is the roof for $75,000. And the page after that is $24,000 for the windows at the academy. Those are the three.
Yes, sir.
Questions on this?
Joe.
Jeff?
Brian, would it make sense to do the second floor windows too? I don't think there's that many up there.
There's 12 on the first floor.
Is it 12 up top?
Yeah. And the second floor aren't in a bad condition at all.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? I think you're all set, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next is solid waste management and recycling, page 41.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening, thanks.
One mic. Nobody's mic.
Get a book.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so we're on page 41. For personnel services, we've budgeted a 1.7% increase, which is essentially contractual. And then for non-personnel services, we ended up with I think the net is a 4.9% increase, the majority of which takes place in lines, it's 101-43040, which is material handling, which has a 7.7% increase, which is a blend of contractual increases and volume changes. There's also a 3.1% increase in refuse and recycling collection, which is a contractual increase. And because of those increases, we see an increase at 101-43040, which is 588060, the condo association rebate, at 2.6%, which tracks with the net increase of the material handling. Just tracks with the variance in collection.
Got it. And so the total request is, the operating budget is $5,172,143, increase of $231,701. Questions from the board on this?
That's different from our page 41, but
do you have less?
we have 1711593.
So we'll go with yours. It's a little cheaper. That's all right. We'll use this book. So there was no questions on the operating side. I just wanted to commend you, Paul, and your team for what you had delivered with those all those new containers. Because you came last year to get the money for it, and I was really saying, I don't know how you're going to do that by June. And you did it. So you and your team and volunteers and everybody else, it was really a success. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it, and I'll say everyone on the team appreciates it. And we couldn't have done it without
I was
a lot
impressed.
of other departments in town and the help of the First Selectman.
First Selectman too? Oh. Very good. All right. Yeah, we had a question, I believe. John? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, in terms of the recycling program, how is it going in town? You know, what sort of volumes are you seeing how can we improve? What sort of obstacles do you have to overcome in order to actually achieve a better result?
I'll take a crack at answering that. So, our recycling volume has increased. Our solid waste volume has increased, where we have more waste. Initially, we had a decline, a significant decline in solid waste. But we are flattening out. We do see, and we have seen for a year, a month-to-month comparison, year to year, month-to-month, year to year, a reduction in solid waste, but it's still higher than we projected. With respect to the effectiveness of the recycling program, our recycling cost per ton has decreased significantly as a result of this new program and the new contract. I believe, and we'll have to check the curves, but I believe that recycling still costs us more than trash. So we improve our program and it costs us more, which is counterintuitive, but consistent with the realities of the recycling field, which ultimately, fundamentally recycles cardboard, glass, and metal, and very little plastic. So the more plastic that is recycled, the higher the processing cost at the facilities that we use. So I will leave it at that. There are, when in doubt, throw it out. And we will continue to have, we hope, a reduction in the net cost per ton for our recycling throughput.
That's not what I wanted to hear.
It's the truth. Yeah. It's so much of the plastic ends up in third world countries as opposed to being recycled into reusable American plastic. There's probably more BTU value in the hydrocarbons that are in the plastic than what could be recreated with economic value through recycling of plastic. I'm sorry to tell you.
And where does this solid waste go to die?
Solid waste goes to a trash-to-energy incinerator. We have contracts with Bristol and Preston, operated by Covanta. We have a contractual rate per ton for tipping of trash. We have an extremely favorable price per ton. Typically, we receive a contract notification on an annual basis that tells us which of the two plants our trash will be sent to. Preston typically has a lower tipping fee per ton, but a higher transportation cost. So we have traditionally, and the net of the two is greater than our cost for Bristol. We traditionally have received a notice of what the price would be at each facility. This year's notice indicated the same price at both facilities, regardless of our transportation cost. We anticipate in the next couple of weeks that we will receive some further information on that. But we carried the budgeting for that single tipping fee price.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other questions on the operating side? Now we'll go to page 85 of the capital. We have a request for $100,000 for the sinking fund, I believe.
We're going to hand that over to...
Yeah, so when the sinking fund first started was due to the cart purchasing and the expected life of those carts. So every eligible home in town received trash and recycling carts, and they have an expected life of usually 7 to 10 years is what we were told, and we're seeing a lesser decline in the carts than we imagined could happen. So originally this started at $225,000 per year for, I believe, 10 years to get up to a certain number that would allow us to replace every cart in town if needed by 7 to 10 years. And we're seeing that on a slower line than what was expected. So that was partly why we decided to lower our cost request from 225 to 100,000.
Okay, thank you. Questions on this, on the capital request? Questions from the RTM members? Do you have a question?
No, good.
Okay, I think you're all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is fire protection. Page 35, 36.
Good evening.
Welcome.
How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. So with me tonight is Assistant Chief Kozak and Chairman of the Board, Robert Massey. Just want to mention on page 9, the revenue side of the budget, ambulance revenue fees have been increased to offset taxation by $80,000. And that brings us to page 35, which is our operating budget. We worked very hard to present a budget that was as bare to the bone as we possibly could, understanding the large increase you gave us last year. I just want to mention and thank the board and the RTM for supporting that. I can tell you that it's working. Response times have definitely improved. The neighborhood's noticed, and as well as having the ability to have the additional resources that we were short many times in the past. So it is working, and I appreciate that. With that being said, Chief Kozak and I worked very hard to look at the actual numbers and make some decreases where we could on the actual numbers with the new people and some retirements. So you will see some reductions on the personnel side where we could. The remaining increases are contractual on the personnel side, and one of the happily unanticipated part is when we advertised for EMTs. We ended up getting some paramedics that were full-time working for us. They get paid an EMT rate, but they do earn a paramedic stipend, so you'll see an increase in the stipend side, and that was negotiated when we did the MOU with the union. But it's a pretty good benefit to the town for a lot less money than a firefighter paramedic, so we'll take that. On the non-personnel side, we originally presented our budget. It came in at about 1.9%, but you'll see the large increase under ambulance billing. We increased by $67,400, and again, that's based on the revenue that's coming in. We have to pay the billing company, so the more revenue, the more we have to pay, so it's actually a good thing. But it did, it ends up there, so it gave us that 2.7. Other than that, we just have one small increase, or a couple of small increases in the purchase services, repairs, and maintenance in some of our supply accounts.
All right, so the total request is $9,535,394, increase of $256,965. Questions from the board?
Yes.
Deborah?
Hi, Tom.
Hello.
Hey, 2 questions, please. You mentioned response times. What is your current response time, and how does that compare to other towns?
So our goal is to have about a 4-minute response time for the initial unit arriving on the scene of an emergency. From headquarters to Indian Neck area that we're covering now with the full-time staff, it was more than double that in some areas. So we've basically cut that in half. And when you just think about travel times, and one of the reasons we want to add the 3rd station on Acorn Road, we've talked about, for the future, is Stony Creek is our longest response time. That's about 12 minutes on a good day. So when you consider whether it's a fire, which spreads exponentially, or a medical emergency where you have, if you're without oxygen to your brain and vital organs for more than 6 minutes, we're not going to be able to affect any real positive change. So the goal is 4 minutes. Can't really speak to other communities. I can say that obviously if you have similar communities like East Haven, they should have similar response times depending on the geographical location of their personnel. They're covered pretty well. Guilford, they have a main headquarters centered kind of right around the Exit 58 area, and their next staff station's in North Guilford. It's 20 minutes from headquarters to that station, and then it's another 20 minutes to the Durham line. So just different communities and how they do things. But Branford is, only 22 square miles, but it's very dense. It's so densely populated. Building fires can spread to neighbors very quickly. So that's what, why we presented the plan is for a couple of reasons was response times, decrease in the number of available volunteers, which continues, and then just the sheer call volume has increased. So we do a little bit more every year, and this help has really made a difference. The model's made a difference in a bunch of ways, such as allowing us the opportunity to train more, and also have that first responder, because ambulances transport out of town. So our main engine, which was the only staffed engine at one point, was going from medical to medical while the ambulances were out of town. At least now we can share that workload a little bit more, and it's more likely that we have a first responder for whatever the emergency is next, whether it's a fire or request.
Also a question about staffing. There's been a big increase to your staff, especially on the EMT side. Are you comfortable with your staffing? Are you close to where you want to be in terms of staffing?
Well, we do have the plan to build the station out east, which when we presented the deployment and staffing plan back in before the previous year's budget, we had talked about building the station out east and staffing it with an additional 8 firefighters. Right now, the main engine out of headquarters is running a little bit heavy, so they have 4 firefighters, which is honestly the actual standard for staffing. But we have a goal of staffing 3 engines with 3 firefighters each on them. So we would be able to take the 4th off engine 1 with the 8 firefighters. That would give 3 per shift. So we have 4 shifts that have to be covered. Once we do that, 90% of the built-up area of town will be covered in the 4-minute response. And from there, I'd feel pretty comfortable that we're in a good spot. The future's uncertain for a lot of reasons, whether Branford's population grows or it shrinks or what goes on with as we age. I don't have that crystal ball, but I think we gave you a good plan and a goal to get to that'll get us where we need to be.
Thank you.
So we had a question. Chief, you had mentioned, I think you answered my question, but the volunteer services, they're continuing to decline. That trend is continuing.
Yeah, unfortunately, when we started the conversation, we had a total number of active volunteers on the roster of 42. We're down to 38 today. So it does continue to slowly decline. We interviewed a few more today. We're hoping to bring them on board. But what we're seeing is the younger generation that's coming in is looking for an employment. So they use this opportunity to maybe gain some certifications through the department as they volunteer. They give it back to the community, but they're really looking for full-time employment, and they don't stick around just as volunteers. And it's one of the considerations that we have as a community is just, how expensive housing is and the type of people we're able to attract to do these jobs, to volunteer. And I think everybody who's been here for any length of time, especially who's maybe grown up in the community, understands that each one of our little districts were the community among themselves, right? So you had Branford, but they were made up of all these little districts, and each one of those volunteer firehouses was the center of that community, and everybody volunteered, and they had like 40 active members in each one, and that model has really just disappeared since we've grown as to be more of a vehicle mobile community that works out of town but lives in town, if that makes sense.
Okay, other questions? Questions from the audience, our team members, if you come up. Yes. Just need to identify
Hello everyone, this is Shahida. I'm from District 4 RTM member. I have a question for you. I live in 37 Branford, Branford Hill Park, and the Bourbon Drive. There is so many people are going, cars are going so fast. So I know that main roads, everybody is so conscious that we have to speed limit, but internal roads, people don't care. Sometimes I'm not talking about only me, but I can imagine when I am facing that every day I walk with my dog, and there is some cars are going really fast, and there is a park also. I'm worried about the kids. So do you have any plan, especially in summertime, that cops can stand sometime in the internal roads, or just come during the day? So.
Are you talking about traffic control?
Yeah, traffic control.
That would be the next department. Yeah,
He carries a gun. We got the hose. So we'll have the police chief address that question for you.
I thought we were speeding too, so I thought that.
Yeah.
That was good.
Other questions or comments from the audience? Tracy?
I thought we were speeding too. That's what I thought.
Park a fire truck there.
Tracy Everson, RTM District 5. Gentlemen, the RTM just approved bonding for 3, I guess, additional fire trucks. Can you talk about where you are in the ordering of these trucks? Is there concern?
We'll deal with that when we get to capital.
Oh, when you get to capital. Okay. My apologies.
That's okay. That's okay.
You can answer that when you get to
Sure. Yeah, we'll move on. We're still on the operating side.
Be happy to.
So if there's no other questions on the operating budget, then we'll deal with that question and others. I believe the capital is on page 85. No, 47.
So I have 47.
47. And we start with that, and then we'll go through those. So the first one is I believe the ambulance sinking fund.
Ambulance sinking fund, yes. So in fiscal 26, we're looking at $100,000 into the sinking fund. We don't intend to purchase an ambulance for another 2 years, really. But the goal is to put the money in and have a predictable amount in the account so we can purchase the ambulance in that what would probably be the fiscal 28 year with cash. And then, start the cycle all over again. We do about every 2 years, Joe, and we get about 10 years out of the ambulance before we we've had success lately with remounts, which saves, it's about 2/3 of the cost of a brand new ambulance. So as long as we can do that, that's the goal. It's not always depending on the manufacturers out there that are doing that work that we can trust to give us a good product. We found somebody we feels delivered on that, so that would be our approach moving forward. It's just to remount, and it extends the life. Basically, the patient compartment gets rehabbed, and we get a brand new cabin chassis set on top of it, and they do all the electrical and stuff. So it's almost like a new one, but it saves 1/3 of the cost.
So if we want to run through them, and then we can get any questions.
Okay, sure. So the next one would be the transport equipment, and what we had been doing, depending on the year in the sinking fund, is this becomes kind of a permanent part of each ambulance. So this is the power load stretcher mount and the power stretcher. These power devices are hydraulic, and they're battery operated hydraulic devices that save the lifting. We deal with a lot of very heavy people, and the cost of one back injury could exceed the cost of the approximately $44,000 cost of the set. So you get the stretcher and the permanent mount in the ambulance that pulls the stretcher in. So that will stay with the ambulance through the life, and then depending on how it's fared, it may even be able to be handed down to the next ambulance. And we do get a fair amount of trade-in value out of some of these things when we do purchase them.
Okay.
Next, we have AEDs. We don't have a request for fiscal '26 for automatic defibrillators. These are the, not to be confused with the life pack monitor defibrillators with the paramedics use to do electrocardiograms and monitor vital signs. These are just the, like you would find on the wall in all the buildings. We put those in all of the units carry those, so that should you get to a heart attack victim, then cardiac arrest, they can affect care. But we were asked to put in, both 26 and 27, so you guys could see that. We do intend to purchase a cardiac monitor defibrillator this year, so the request is $42,000, and that includes all of the needed cases and all the protective stuff that comes with that. The self-contained breathing apparatus, or SCBA, we started this sinking fund so that we can completely replace all of our units over a couple-year period. We're coming up to the maturity where we would purchase, make the large purchase, and then we would continue the sinking fund into the future, so that the next replacement we have the cost. Again, it's designed to, like most of our sinking funds, designed to keep things predictable moving forward and not have to come in 15 years when we have to replace them again and say I need $8 million instead of these smaller amounts. Fire apparatus sinking fund, and to Representative Everson's question, yes, we did, the RTM just approved and the Board of Finance approved the bonding plan for the purchase of several large pieces, so 2 pumpers in the ladder truck, as well as the rescue truck. So this, the bonding plan was approved, and the $400,000 is what was presented as part of that plan to be able to pay the bonding, and as well as leave some money in the sinking fund moving forward, again, to kind of get back into the normal cycle of sinking it and having the cash in place when we need to make the large purchases. We are trying to spread these out a little bit more so we don't run into the same problem in the future where 4 pieces need to be purchased all at once.
Okay.
This is a new capital request, fire station alerting system. This is the device that's in the firehouse that alerts the firefighters to a call once it's dispatched via CAD, turns on the lights, makes a loud noise, that kind of thing. The current headquarters has failed several times. It is as old as the headquarters. It was purchased from a company out in California that is horrific to work with, and our goal is to replace that. Station 9 was never designed to have it, so it needs its own alerting system. Right now we kind of have this, we're using basically digital pagers and amplifiers to try to simulate that right now. It's not a 100% reliable system, and we obviously want to have not only reliability but redundancy. And then this system would be designed, should we build a station out east, where we could continue the same system into that building.
Could you explain that a little more?
Yeah, so the station alerting system is tied into our radio and our CAD, and then it's tied into various building services. So for instance, it turns on the lights in the bunk rooms and the path to the apparatus, turns on the lights in the apparatus, makes a loud noise that ramps up slowly, so you're alerting people in the middle of the night. It has to be loud enough to wake them, but not so much that it jars you out of a sound sleep, because that adds to people's stress levels. And
what are you using now?
At headquarters, we have the device that was built with the building. It's called WestNet, and it is basically almost 13 years old now. So it's had a couple of issues, and when we've had to send it, it's not one of those things where it's in the cloud now. You literally have to take the device, wait for a replacement, put it in, send it all the way out to California, and twice they've lost it and didn't even know they had it. So whenever we want to make any changes, for instance, we just changed these models, right? So it's not synced to the way we're working right now. And so what we're trying to do is replace that and add the one at Station 9 with the same technology. We've talked to 3 different companies. We've gotten 3 prices. We feel this is more than enough money, but we didn't want to come in short. We still haven't gone into actual bid, so these are kind of like raw numbers based on preliminary conversations.
So years ago, they had the sirens on the top of the buildings?
Yeah.
That was the alert?
That was the alert. That was part of the alert.
Us 3 got jarred back in the day. We had the buzzer in the house when you slept. Yeah, you got jarred.
Yeah. It was
loud.
It was just that, a very loud buzzer that would...
The spoon chip is working.
Okay. And next is the conceptual design.
We wanted to keep the conversation going for the Acorn Road Station. We feel that hiring a design professional to not only give us conceptual designs, but also give us a budget number that we could present to the board in the future. This preliminary conversation we had with the first selectman and the board of fire commissioners was to try to get ahead of and include all of those questions that sometimes seem to be afterthoughts, like, can we add solar panels? Do we need, the green stuff, right? So we want to try to answer all these questions up front and come to the board with a number of what we feel is a good budget number to build the station. So we are asking for that in fiscal '26. The radio upgrade fund, we've had this fund for quite a while now. Again, sinking fund. It's designed to purchase so many portable radios and so many mobile radios, and then leave a balance to purchase the larger ticket items like repeaters, receivers, and transmitters, which we have several sites throughout the town. We have 5 separate sites where we have this equipment. So this fund completely funded the Exit 56 site, which was a completely new site, covered some dead areas, and it included both police and fire. So this year we're asking for $70,000.
And what will that fund?
That will fund approximately 10 portable radios this year and a couple of mobile radios. And then the balance will stay in the account, Joe, to sync for the future. I believe the balance right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of $128,000.
Thanks. Thank
you. And then the last is hydraulic rescue tool. These are the Jaws of Life equipment. The current set is 10 years old. We have much older equipment that we have on some other units, and this that older units are approaching obsolescence, basically. We have to have it serviced and tested every year. And for instance, Stony Creek, Rescue 1, and Engine 2s is all essentially obsolete. So we're replacing this. Let's go on the main line, and then the equipment that's on the main line will then get handed down to these slower units.
How many do we have now in these units?
We have one full set on the main career engine, and that includes spreaders, cutters, and a ram, so for pushing. And this is for vehicle extrication, heavy vehicle extrication, that kind of thing. We have a smaller unit, just a spreader kind of combo unit on our light rescue truck, and then we have a spreader unit in Stony Creek, a spreader and a cutter, I believe, on Engine 2, and then we have much older stuff on the heavy rescue. Once that stuff can no longer be serviced, we'll just phase it out. It doesn't have really a value to us anymore.
Right, okay. So several requests for capital items. Questions from the board on these capital requests? Go to Jeff, and then I'll go to Deborah.
Chief, so how many units does the 60,000 buy for the extrication?
For the extrication, it essentially is a spreader, the cutter, and the ram.
And a pump?
Well, they're all battery powered now,
okay.
So they're called e-hydraulics, but they're contained units. But similar to what what would have been run by the generator with hydraulic lines back in the day.
Okay, thank you. Just going backwards here, on the Acorn Road opportunity, are we committed to this? As a town committed?
The town has not committed in any way other than conceptually. We did present it as part of the plan and talked about, where we see the timeline moving. The fire commission and the fire department's committed, but obviously we don't hold the purse strings, so.
I understand.
That's why we're here.
So as part of the plan, if this came to fruition, what happens to Company 5 in Stony Creek? Since they're the most active volunteer company right now.
They still are the most, they are one of the most active. Two's technically is most active, but they do have probably the most members. The problem is those members aren't always available during the daytime. It's almost non-existent unless Tilcon's closed, and you might get a couple of members because they work there. But other than that, the way I'm looking to the future, Jeff, is that we would have the 3 career stations covering the 90%. But on those larger incidents and for storm coverage and just support, I still think there's a role for both Company 5 and a kind of a combined, what we're doing now.
I know there's a lot of dedicated older volunteers out there, both in twos.
We still do, and we're gonna keep them viable as long as we can. We still support them in every way possible, and we're still trying to recruit and maintain it.
Right, okay. Regarding apparatus, I know we agreed to the 2 pumpers in the ladder truck. I don't recall the rescue. Is that heavy-duty rescue or the light?
185.
No, this was it was in the plan, and it's basically we're going from that custom rescue truck that would cost us about $1 million if we were to replace it today to just a box truck with a lift gate.
Okay, I do remember that discussion. Okay.
Essentially, it's just a large storage truck that we need to get this stuff to the scene.
Update my memory.
Yep.
And then on the cardiac monitor, in that description it says that there's 20 AEDs on the first responders. Are those 20 included in the $40,000 on the regular purchase?
So there's 2 different, the AEDs, next year we will not be getting a cardiac monitor defibrillator, which is the big life pack that does all the, we would replace the AED. So that is the request in 2027. We just showed it in here as because we were asked to present both 26 and 27.
Okay.
We do not intend to purchase defibrillators and the monitor next year. We're asking for the monitor this year and the AEDs in 2027. If that, does that make sense? I agree that it may be confusing in there. On page 50 under cardiac monitor, under 2027, that should be 0.
Okay. So is your department also responsible for purchasing the AEDs that might be in this building, the ones on the green, town hall?
No.
Those are funded separately?
Those are funded separately.
Thank you.
Question for Deborah.
Chief, back to the fire station alerting system. I'm just curious, in the Indian Next Station, what is being used? You said it doesn't currently have this same...
We have basically digital pagers, which are small radios that plug into an amplifier, and they're working, but they're not considered like a fail-safe, like the station alerting, the permanently mounted station alerting system is. And what we're trying to do is meet the standard. So NFPA writes the standard for station alerting. You're supposed to have a backup, which the digital pagers would normally be, and the station alerting system. So when we built that station, remember, if everyone remembers correctly, the whole elevator argument, because if it went over that $2 million mark, we weren't going to build that station. So this wasn't even a consideration at the time.
Thank you.
So Deborah doesn't turn the lights on. It doesn't do that for us. Like the old station we had that used to throw us out of bed, used to turn the lights on for us at least. But yeah, so.
Okay. Other questions on the capital requests? Questions from the RTM members or members of the public? John, you want to come up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, I should really have asked this question earlier. When I think of fire departments, I think of fires, obviously. And I know that that's not exactly what happens. Could you give us like a 50,000-foot view of how much of your time is spent fighting fires? Sort of major?
Very little.
Very little. And how much is spent, with ambulance services or?
The majority of what we do, by far, is emergency medical care. So to sum us up, we're a little bit misnamed for today's day and age, so we should be called the department they call when they don't know who else to call. We do everything from lifting, I've fallen and I can't get up, to public service calls and that kind of thing. The great majority of what we do, about 74% of what we do, is actually EMS related. So it's definitely the majority of what we do. But fires still occur, and when they do, you need to have the resources quickly, otherwise they spread, especially in these built-up areas of town. But we're also we're a fire rescue department. We're a very marine-centric environment here with the islands, the rivers. We have 10 marinas. So we have 2 fire boats, and all of these skill sets that our people carry require training. And so a lot of what they do during the day is train when they're not doing medical calls, which is a lot of times. The morning today was a pretty good example. It was relatively quiet up until about lunchtime, and then not only did we have 4 of our ambulances on the road, we had 1 from North Branford and 1 from Guilford. So it goes from 0 to 100. But we are kind of an all hazards department for the town.
And I know that there's a tremendous amount of cooperation between the various departments in East Haven and Guilford, et cetera. And we'll talk about this more, I think, when it comes to the request to build the new fire station. But what is the opportunity for a more regionalized approach when you're looking at a new facility?
I think there are opportunities for certain regionalization, John, but and I'm very open to them. I consider myself a little bit less home rule, especially when it's certain pieces of apparatus, maybe specialized equipment, or whether it's a ladder truck or rescue truck. In a perfect world, maybe every other community could have one. We could all work together. But the problem is that this is New England, and a lot of the communities don't work together. What we do well is in a lot of the technical rescue and hazardous materials type stuff. It's low frequency but high risk stuff that every community can't afford all of the equipment, all the specialized training, and have enough people on site. So we do that regionally with Guilford. We have automatic aid agreements with East Haven, especially to cover, the Short Beach station right now is not reliable. So on any report of a building fire, East Haven comes here, and any report of a building fire in 3 districts in East Haven we go to. So we are doing a lot of that, but because the exit 56 and that whole east end of town is our longest response from headquarters, and when you consider that the goal is to have that 4-minute response, we would be getting closer to that, but we also have Guilford coming this way as well. So there's areas of Stony Creek that, for instance, have no water supply. There's still a few areas in town that don't have water supply. So Guilford comes with tankers, North Branford comes with tankers. So we do a lot of that, working with each other stuff.
Is there any formalized cost sharing when you go to East Haven or Guilford comes to us?
Mutual aid is just that, and you're responsible for all your own. So if somebody gets injured fighting a Guilford fire, and it's that's on us. Same thing if they come here and their person gets injured, that's on them. So there's no real cost sharing right now. I do see some opportunities maybe in the future. I know it's been talked about, dispatch centers, that kind of stuff. If we really wanted to cover everything and the other communities wanted to get on board, but right now our neighbor to the north is struggling just to purchase apparatus. They don't have nearly the tax base that Branford does. Their mill rate's probably higher than ours, I think, still. And so they're just different communities.
One final question, actually, this is more for Jim. There's a lot of sinking funds that we're talking about here, and we see in the budget proposal this year, next year, the year following, but what we don't see in the budget proposal is the current status of those sinking funds, to give us some idea of, if we are to put the money in, what does that, how does that accumulate? So I'm sure, Jim, you have the answers to that. I'm not asking for that right now, but it would be nice to see that as part of this process.
Okay, other questions? All set. Next is the emergency management, also page 34.
All right, so page 34, emergency management, just a couple of things I want to mention. It's a 0% increase. I did do some reallocation. I think it's worth consideration. Our stipend, the Deputy Emergency Management Director was just recently appointed by the Board of Selectmen. They were earning $2,000 a year. I'm proposing to increase it to $1,000 a quarter. So it's the only money that they earn is the stipend, basically a volunteer position. The gentleman that was just appointed is eminently qualified and is bringing a lot to the community, so we're extremely happy to have him on board. And where I got the reallocation from is we were purchasing additional licenses for a software product we no longer need. So I'm just reallocating that, or hoping to reallocate that should it be approved.
The request is for $30,500 and zero increase.
It should just be noted that 50% of this budget is covered through the Emergency Management Performance Grant, which currently is still in operation. We earned an additional $5,000 that was just deposited today because we got our local emergency operations plan to the state before the deadline. So they gave us $5,000 for doing that. And we were able to apply a project that came before you where Jim had kind of cobbled up some money from other projects that, and to do the UPS project for the Emergency Operations Center and the server at the firehouse. I was able to use that project and apply for supplemental EMPG grant, of which we earned approximately half the cost, which is about $8,600. So we do, whenever we can, try to bring in additional money from other sources.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions on this budget, $30,500? Questions from the RTM members or members of the public? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up is police services, page 31. Welcome.
Good evening. To hold this up.
Yes.
All right, it's good to be with all of you tonight. With me is Chairman John Souslis of the Police Commission. And if you want, I'll jump right into the operating budget. What you have in front of you, you'll see in the personnel, regular wages and salary, that encompasses 2 additional police officers in this budget. You may recall there was 2 officers added in the previous fiscal year. That is aligned with our analysis and overview of our demands that we conducted late 23, I believe it was almost January of 24. We'll have a new round of data coming in, but I don't think that data is going to be all that encouraging other than on the crime side. It's a very robust document. I encourage people to look on our website for it, and I think it adequately addresses why we need the additional personnel, kind of in line, in parallel with the fire department. What affects us affects them. What affects them affects us. Going down into overtime, you will see a fairly significant increase there. This is an adjustment and an allocation in response to the newly signed collective bargaining agreement. There are several components within that document and adjustments that we made through that negotiations process. This includes a schedule change for the officers. It's more in line with the industry standard. As you know, we are very keen to recruitment and retention in law enforcement, and we have to be competitive. But it also did a bunch of other things. It evened out our deployment of the officers in light of the old contract, which was sporadic. We had heavy nights of staffing and low ones on the weekends. This kind of evened that. But also with that, there was an increase in manpower deployment, meaning our minimum staffing, our minimum deployment of how many officers we have on any given moment or any given shift. In looking at our overview and our assessment, I wasn't comfortable with our staffing levels. So we did increase that. So now the minimum amount of officers is increased. That will require more vacancies, which then will drive up some of the overtime. And until we can get to full staff and really see what that looks like, there's an increase. So that's what that allocation is for. Additionally, within that contract, we did significantly cut back. Very happy to report that we cut back comp time. Comp time is nice, it sounds good, but it grows and it's just feeding those vacancies. And what we really need to strive to do is get the officers on the road and keep them on the road. Although the schedule, if you look at total hours, that is lessened. But with this cut in comp time, we're going to pay our debt as it's due, meaning when they work certain overtime, we're going to pay them and not push it down because we need the staffing and the bodies. So that addresses the increase in the overtime. And all the other ones are basically zero or just contractual. And that's pretty much in the personnel line. We go down into the fixed lines of non-personnel related radio communication system expense. You've heard me year after year about this. This is our Motorola contract. This covers the 5 sites that the fire chief mentioned. Also within this is all system upgrades, software system upgrades by Motorola, facilitated by our vendor Norcom. This is a very good path. I did speak with a consultant about this because this line you will see goes up every single year. But what you are doing is paying as we go, as opposed to at a 5 or 6 year get hit with a significant upgrade bill because Motorola will sunset products and software. Most communities will not prescribe to the avenue that Branford has chosen long-term, and they will all of a sudden see a $1.4 million bill drop on the table, and they give you, maybe a year's warning in that. So this is a good path that you've been on, and I would advocate that you continue on it. The line below that is our communication expense. This is related to all cellular technologies that we utilize for our police cars, our phones, some remote sites that require data transmission. There's an $8,000 increase that was offset by an internal transfer you'll see in there from other supplies and the parts account. What this is doing is we are more reliant on the technology. This is going to be an increase in our field deployment of the cellular phones, specifically with the line officers, to be in alignment with some of the technology changes that we've implemented. Lastly, in the operating budget, membership, conferences, and meetings. This is a $5,500 increase. It's directly related to our memberships with the regional specialized teams we participate, our regional SWAT team, our regional traffic team, some of our computer crimes regional efforts that we lead here in Branford. But more importantly, on the SWAT side, we did pick up another municipality. The town of Wallingford is now part of the 7-town regional SWAT team. But there's some really, really big equipment needs and costs to have a professional team. And in conversation with the 7 other towns, this is an increase that will help us be better positioned to address those equipment needs in the future. And that's all I have on the operating budget.
Okay, so the request is for $8,402,892, increase of $1,046,625. Questions from the board on the operating?
Yeah.
Eric?
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Just to go back to the salaries, last year you had approved 2 new officers. You were able to hire them? You have the 2?
The lines are in the budget, we're in the process, we don't have the bodies. As of now, we have one going to the April class, and I'll have an answer if the second one will make it by the end of business tomorrow, and they will be in the academy. We have 2 on field training. We have 1 on kind of long-term leave, so we're down about 5 or 6 for deployment.
Yeah. So it sounds like in numbers, you need more manpower on the job. So you did 2, you got 2 to recruit this year, but it seems like we're just playing behind due to injury, workman's comp on a fall, and other issues. So are you getting to the point where you're thin?
No, I think we're operational. There are other things that I would like to do. I have said this many times. I think we're engaged in just core services, meaning, we don't have a lot of discretionary time. So some of the issues that you have heard about traffic, and I would love to have some traffic enforcement. I would love, so we're meeting the needs of the community where we need to be. If these 2 officers are approved within this budget, that'll put us at 56 sworn officers for the department. And if you look at our population in the state in different departments, the average would be 59. So we'll still be below that. But ideally, incremental progress to me, I think it gets us. But you hit on a very important part. Yes, we are plagued with a constant rotation. We've lost a couple officers, some that have just departed because the job wasn't for them. Others retire. We average 1 basically on maternity leave pretty much all year, and then 1 on comp normally. And there is no answer for the delay in the process to create a police officer. There really isn't. It takes us a year. And unfortunately, we did have a recruit that went through the academy and did very well. And we vetted this person very hard, but they got on the street and they said, this isn't for me. So now we're chasing. So you bring up a good point. It's a cycle, and we're still in that cycle.
Well, I'd like to say to our chairman that, these are some of the things I think we should talk about in terms of where the police department, as the example, would be going in needed staff. Is it more, and what do we need in that? I don't want to sound like I should be sitting on the other side of the table asking for 4 policemen, and you're me over here saying, okay, go ahead and do that. But I have a concern that maybe we need to work at looking at that you need more officers. It's just the way the turnover goes. Just practically speaking, don't mean to get into philosophy, but in my age bracket, you grew up respecting a policeman. You wouldn't say anything to him, do anything to him, or attempt it. And today, we're dealing with a piece of that population that basically attacks policemen. And I know in our previous conversations, you explained to us all, maybe you can just go over that. If you're called to a scene and your officer is trying to talk down an individual and they're refusing, at some point he may have to put his hands on him. And once he does that, how many filings and how much paperwork go into handcuffing a guy than maybe 10 years ago didn't happen? And are you getting overwhelmed, as all police departments, with a lot of paperwork?
Yeah, we are. So there's a lot there to unpack, but I'll address a few of the things. If you do look at that analysis and overview, it's on our website. On page 8, there's a chart there for time spent on service calls, and it goes back to 2010 all the way up to 22. And there's an extremely stark increase in that chart that you will see. And what that is related to is the time on the call spent. Domestic violence calls, there's a lot of paperwork, assessment, lethality assessments, follow-ups with some services. Use of force, you highlight a very good issue in the sense that if we have a mental health call, that requires 3 cars. To give you just a quick number, average time on scene in minutes, according to our CAD system, 66 minutes. So that could be 2 cars, it could be 3, it could be 1 clears and they're speaking with a family member, but that just gives you. So when we look at our demands, I'm happy to report that our crime numbers are doing fairly well. It's the time on calls and the type of calls that we are engaged in. The fire chief made a comment that he was the department when no one knows where to call. Well, I have to probably step in front of him on that one, because when there's things in society, i.e. cuts in different disciplines, it falls on us. The tracking, the paperwork that the officers have to do. I'll close this topic with just one quick example. When you stop a motor vehicle in the state of Connecticut, the officer is required by law to fill out a racial profiling stop statistic on their computer. It encompasses almost 12 different data fields. And some of you probably heard this in the news about, looking at that, and same thing with the state police. They're on the side of the highway putting these tags in. That extends to use of force, that extends to pursuits, that extends to racial bias crimes, that extends to family violence crimes, and the list goes on and on. Lieutenant Carangelo just came back from a meeting today with a 15-page manual the state of Connecticut is preparing for police departments, so they know all the data reporting that we must do. Thus, we have a crime analyst. Thus, the officers have to fill this out. So I think you bring up some great points. We're doing well. I think that the town has positioned us in a very good position. Would I like to have some expansion within the department in different areas? Yes. We're getting there. I do think there's some technology coming on board that you'll hear from us when we talk about our Axon contract that's coming up, with the use of some AI for some documentation purposes. I don't think this is going to solve our problems, because as much as we clean something up, something new is going to come down this year and it's going to be put on us. So it is a vicious circle, but what we are seeing is it is taking us longer to do some things. Use of force is low. Our numbers are low, and I think that's a testament to the men and women who are out there being patient and doing what they need to do, and if it takes time, it takes time. Unfortunately, there is a percentage of the population that doesn't heed to that professionalism, and at that point, then it does become a use of force. So I do appreciate your concern, but I think we're on the right track.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Harry. Thanks, Chief.
I got one quick question.
Chief, with the new hires, you're funding them at Class A or 100%. Do they start out at C? And how long does it take to get to A?
That's a great question. So what we do is we still, we're still kind of optimistic. Our first goal is to go certified, to track the certified officers. So if we have a vacancy or retirement, our goal is to get a certified officer. With that said, they meet the criteria for our grade A, and that's how we're recruiting them. Mm-hmm. We just onboarded a certified officer from another department. She will be starting with us next week. So we need that latitude to come in at A. In this budget, you'll see the 4 lower ones, which are the 2 additional and the 2 lower. Those are 2 A's and 2 C's. I need that ability to float that money to attract. If we get up to the plate and we hit a home run, great. If we strike out, then we go to recruit. But that's why you'll see that differential.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yep.
Okay, other questions on the operating side? Questions from members of the audience? Any additional questions on the operating for police? If not, thanks. We'll move on to the capital requests, which I believe start on page 63 of the...
All right. As far as capital, I just want to point out one that's in our 5-year needs. Just really quickly, that's what they call drone first responder program. It is not looking for any funding in this budget. Just want to throw it on the lack of a better word, the radar. This is a program that is currently being used in some agencies our size. There is one Connecticut municipality that is going to be rolling this out soon. It is a drone that's mounted on the top of the building, the police building. It's tied to the CAD system, and it will deploy immediately in an emergency, and it will give us real-time information. Community our size, at this point, it's about $150,000 a year. I see some really good benefits coming out of this for the future. I think it's something we keep our eye on, so I included it in the 5-year capital. Vehicles, it's our standard ask for the 5 vehicles. What this will be is 5 marked vehicles. One of them will be a canine vehicle, 4 will be for the front line. Again, kudos to our Public Works Department, fantastic. They keep our fleet safe, keep our officers safe. These cars run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, most of them. And then we have different lines of these cars that go on the construction jobs, which, depending on what we're doing as far as construction revenue comes in, we're in a little low right now, but I project that'll go up. The rest of the lines are pretty much standard over the years. They're really pretty much flat. And the only other one I want to call attention to and kind of thank the finance director for this is the police technology sinking fund. This money is on the IT side. Technically, it's under Director Smith's budget, but I just want to point out that the body cams, the in-car cams, and all of that technology basically is wrapped up under Axon. They are the leader in that internationally. We've used them for years, but the costs keep going up. And just to point out, it is driven by state law. This is something that in 2020 they passed. So there's data retention. There's a whole host of things. We have a contract coming up that for 5 years is going to be a little bit north of $800,000. So this was something in discussion with him that he created. I know Scott may hit on this, but I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention and get that out there in the public.
What's the lag time on getting a police car online from purchase?
Depends on what day or month you ask me that. There's 2 parts to that issue. One is the car and one is what goes in it. Actually 3, and those who can install it. So any one of those links in the chain are weak. We're waiting long periods of time. We get some luck, but it's a very long process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm showing there's also a capital request for the ballistic vest replacement for $10,044.
Yeah, that's just the yearly allocation. We just did that this year. That's a 5-year cycle. The vests are good for 5 years.
Okay, then the police vehicles are $257,500. The related equipment for the police vehicles, $136,500. The portable radios of $9,800. The speed detection and warning devices of $12,000. And I think that rounds it out. Yeah, okay. So those are the capital requests for the police. Questions from the board on those?
Just real quick, just to clarify, John, you have a grant. Do you have a grant on the vests, on the ballistic vests to offset?
Yeah, we do. We have a grant. They caution you that it's not guaranteed. However, I'm going back about 15 years. I've been administering that same grant, and it's always come through. So that is a 50% reimbursement. We pay up front, and they're fairly quick with it, but it takes some time, and that money's funneled back in.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from board members on this? Questions from the RTM members or members of the public on the capital request for the police department? Okay, and then we'll move on to special detail for police, page 33. It's what's the total amount on this one?
525.
525,000. This is self-funded through revenue and no issues on that. Any questions? If not, we thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next is probate court, page 21. Good evening, Chuck.
Thank you for the opportunity to present my budget. So the only increase relates to insurance, and it's a relatively high increase, but I can't really control that. And I would note that after we prepared the budget, our scanners are a problem, and it looks like we're going to need new scanners, and I'm told that it's going to cost about $1,900 to replace the ones we have. The issue with the scanners came up after we submitted our budget, which is why it's not included. But it was suggested by Mr. Finch that I send you a letter just outlining that and possibly having it come out of contingency.
Okay. Very good, Judge. The request is for $18,350 for the operating for the probate court, and then $1,900, which should likely be, would that be under your capital, or is that below the threshold?
Below the threshold.
So that would be, we increase that $18,350 by $1,900 for a request. Questions from the board? Questions from RTM members and members of the public on the probate court?
17,920, but yeah.
All right, Judge, you're all set.
Thank you very much.
Next up is IT. Page 29.
Good evening. An overall budget shows up as 11.2%, but I'm just going to go through some of the highlights and then answer any questions you may have. To start with the staffing, a little while ago, this board supported me reallocating some funds to create some overtime and to create a part-time position. So in next year's budget, I'd like to carry that forward. We do have a part-timer starting April 1st, and the overtime has already served its purpose because we've got a couple of projects that were pending that have now been completed. So I would like to continue with those two things as a staffing strategy. Obviously, down the road, I think we might be looking at another full-time position, but for now, I think we can get by with this. The other thing that you will see is that I just shifted around some funds based on professional development, travel, and membership and conferences. That's just my own personal opinion of how things I think should be broken out. If you follow the numbers, they pretty much are equal. So it's just really moving funds around in those accounts, in those line items. And then, of course, the big one is the repairs and maintenance accounts. So that is all of our yearly support for hardware, software, any kind of subscriptions, for anything that's IT related in most of the departments. Pretty much all the departments, or most of them, have all of their subscriptions and their support contracts for everything in that budget line item. So you'll see a large increase. It's 28.9. I was able to remove some of it, the stuff that was there last year or this current year, but we had new products come into that line item at about $237,000, and then we were able to remove about $113,000. That coupled with the existing, annual increases of the other items, that's where we arrived at the what is it, 800. Yeah, 820, 8616. Unfortunately, a lot of those are contractual. We can't really get rid of them. I mean, people are using them. It's part of the operation of the town. The biggest new things that came on is the OpenGov. There's two OpenGov projects, which is software for permitting, and the other one is software for asset management that Public Works is going to use.
So those came in as a yearly, almost $150,000 between the two of them. So that's a big increase right there. So the other items down below, I tried to just offset that. We had some items that we could purchase this current year, which then I could take out of the budget for next year. So we tried to offset some of those, that large increase in the repairs and maintenance account, and to reduce it down so that we could not have such a large increase. I know the budget, is got to keep the budget low, for obvious reasons. Plus, I'm the new guy, and I didn't want to come in with a 20% budget. So, right? So, that's about it. I'm glad to ask or answer any questions you may have.
Okay, so the request is $1,417,834 for the information technology operating budget, increase $142,948. Questions from the board?
Just a,
Pam?
I'm sorry if I missed it, but just a question about, you said that you hired, so you had overtime budgeted, now that you have a part-time person. Are you saying you want to continue with keeping the overtime in there in case you need it?
Yes.
Okay.
So we started using the overtime maybe a month or so ago in this current budget, and then we funded a part-time position, but that person hasn't started yet. And so the 11,000 that you'll see is for this current year, and they're going to start April 1st and work 3 days a week. And then I wanted to budget for next year, so that's the $40,000 request.
Okay, so you don't anticipate overtime going down then with the hiring of this new part-time person?
I don't, but it may. It definitely may, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions from IT? Questions from RTM members of the public? All right, Scott, you got off easy on that. Let's move on to the capital.
So the capital, I have two items.
I think it's page 1661. 1661, yeah.
So I have two things in the capital. Basically, the police chief just mentioned one of them, which was the technology sinking fund. That is going to be a combination of payouts for two different contracts. One being the dash cams, and then we're in the second year of that contract right now, and it's a 5-year contract. And then we have a new 5-year contract for the body cams and all that entails. And so those are large contracts, but those I don't see going away because it's a state mandate, and we're kind of at the mercy of Axon. They are the leader in that technology. So there's really not much we can do about it as far as getting rid of them, being it's a state mandate. The second item is to replace the mobile data terminals in the cars. They currently are using Patrol PC, and they're having issues with those. So the chief and I have talked about getting replacements. We were looking at a couple different of technologies there, and hopefully we'll be able to find one that the police will like, and that's what that second capital item is for the $60,000.
Okay. Questions on the board on this capital request? Questions from the RTM members of the public? All right, Scott, you're all set. Thank you.
Thank
Scott, have the microphone.
Mike.
Yeah, I'm next.
Do you have a question or you have a comment, sir? No, I'm actually filling in for Paula, so. Okay, you go to the next one. All right. So the next budget is the assessor on page 15. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah. Okay, a couple things. One is I know that everybody's talking about the revow, and it's probably the understatement. And what I did is I gave you a sheet. I'll pass them out to the audience. I was thinking about... I was thinking about, actually, I think it's on my sheet, so yes, they do. So I was thinking about, because, a lot of conversations I have in town hall and in public, and I was trying to say if there was a good way to sort of distill one of the issues of the reval in sort of one page. And in many of the memos, we've talked about why we do revaluation. We say that it's to bring about uniformity in property valuations, to assure that all property owners are paying their fair share of the cost of community services. That sounds like a very impressive goal, but I wanted to kind of illustrate that concept at work. So what you have on the sheet is a tale of three properties, and it's the revaluation illustrated. And these are mythical properties, but it does underscore some of the things that work. So the first one is, so you have your revalue, basically all three of these properties go through 2019, 5 years forward to the current reval. So the first property owner is Steady Stephen. He has an appraised value of $350, an assessed value of $245. It's the first year of the reval, 2019. He has an assessment ratio of 70%. Now, over the next period of 5 years, Steady Stephen's property appreciates at 3% a year. And you'll notice what's happening to Steady Stephen's property. You'll see that the assessed ratio continues to drop every year because the value is going up, the appraised value by 3% a year, or market value. But in reality, the assessed value is staying the same until the next reval. Now compare that to Kathy Cruiser. As the name might suggest, her property is growing at a much faster rate. So she's growing at about 8% a year. And so you can see at the end of those 5 years, Kathy's property is now appraised at $697. Assessed value with the 24 reval would be $488,552. That brings her to 70%. But in the meantime, her assessed ratio dropped to 51%. Okay. And then you have Charlie Commercial. This would be an example of a commercial property. Appraised starts out at $1,005,000, assessed value about $1,050,000. Now, this property only appreciates 2% a year. So at the end of the 5 years, Charlie Commercial sees his increase in value go to $109,285, or 10%. And at that, and just before that, the assessed ratio is 65%. Now here's the fairness issue of the revaluation. When you look in the final box, you'll see that when the last reval was done in 2019, they all had the same assessment ratio. That's what we talk about, ensuring that all property owners pay their fair share. But because the markets are changing for each of these three properties, by the time 23 comes around, which would be last year's budget, you can see this, they're all paying different ratios. So Steady Stephen is doing 62%, Kathy Kruger's at 51%, and Charlie Commercial's at 65%. And the whole purpose of the revaluation is to bring them back to 70. But when that happens, you can see how it affects the properties differently. So again, in Steady Stephen's case, he sees an increase in value of 16%. Kathy Cruiser saw hers go up 47%, while Charlie Commercial only saw it at 10%. So you can really see all of these different value changes that occur. Now, this is only 3 properties. It doesn't include personal property or motor vehicles. But this really gives you a snapshot on typically what's going on in a revaluation. So.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Very, very informative. Okay, any questions on the board on Jim's initial presentation here? It's pretty self-evident at this point. Jim, would you like to cover the assessor's budget? The assessor's budget on page 15.
Yep. Okay, so essentially, the salary account is going up 1.7% for the different positions. Paula Jensen is in the supervisors union, so that contract will be outstanding at the start of the fiscal year. The other thing I want to point out is that they'll be requiring some transfers in the current year. They'll be transferring to the seasonal part-time help, and they'll also need to do a transfer for accumulated sick pay. Those will be transfers that you'll probably see coming to you in March or April. In the personal property audits, that's fairly self-explanatory. Appraisal services, that's essentially a couple companies. You have Quality Data Services, QDS, Vision Appraisal that does their web hosting, and New England Geo, to name a couple, and they do the GIS mapping. Overall, the budget itself, with all of these changes, is about a 1.5% increase.
Okay, thanks, Jim. So the operating request is for $537,745, increase of $7,696. Questions from the board on this budget? Questions from the members of the RTM or the public? Okay.
And on the capital side, for the assessor's office, there's, oh, somebody had a question?
Question out there?
Yeah.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. Just identify yourself. Can you identify yourself, if you would?
Hello, Josh Marshall from 186 Damascus Road. I'm wondering if the resident or the commercial example is representative for the commercial properties, roughly holding out a 2% increase?
No, that's a hypothetical trying to show that different properties appreciate at different rates.
Okay, do you have an idea of what the average number or percentage appreciation for commercial properties is?
I can look at it as a group, and now I can't tell you exactly the percent that they appreciated, but I can tell you that as a percent of the grand list overall, that in 2023 fiscal year, commercial property represented about 17% of the grand list, and they're dropping to about 15% of the grand list. So relative to other properties, commercial is not going up as fast.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay, thanks, Jim. We'll move on to the capital request, which is on page 1 of the capital section.
Okay, this is for the revaluation sinking fund. Like many of our sinking funds, this is when we know that we have costs. For example, the revaluation we know occurs every 5 years. In some years, it's a statistical revaluation, which it would have been in 2019. Obviously, the year we're in is a physical revaluation in which they actually go out and to the properties themselves. And so the request is for excuse me, $75,000. We're taking a second look at that. We may be able to provide a haircut there, but essentially it's the same concept that we put money aside every year for the revaluation.
Okay, thanks. Questions on this capital request from the board? Questions from the public on this? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the Board of Assessment Appeals on page 16.
Yep. And okay. Yeah, the Board of Assessment Appeals, the obvious question there is why the drop? And essentially that's a common pattern in years when there is a revaluation. There are more folks assigned to the Board of Assessment Appeals. And then in the non-reval years, it typically drops to a lower amount.
Okay, so the request is $15,355, decrease of $5,393. Questions from the board on this? Questions from the RTM members or members of the public? Okay, thanks, Jim. Next up is East Shore Health District. Page 45.
Hello.
Welcome.
So to start, I'm Amy Schultz. I'm the Deputy Director at the East Shore Health District. Mike is actually visiting his son who's studying abroad, so he's out of the country. And I have JP here, who's our Business Manager.
Welcome.
So just as a reminder, we're a regional health district. We cover 3 towns. And as part of our budget, we look at per capita and population. So our board of directors sets the per capita rate, and that is at $14.08. We looked at the population based on the 2023 census data, and that comes out 28,031. So that's where the number 394,676 came from. Next is we have our mosquito control budget. So we, at the health district, manage that contract, but those funds come directly through the town budget. And then we have the pump out boat water quality program that is 75% funded through the state. And then Branford is one of 5 municipalities who are part of the program, and that's where the 3,000 comes from. Each of the 5 split that.
Okay, so the total request is $414,488, and we do have, do we have any detail of your budget? I don't think we've received that.
I do have a copy that I can now, we can send you as well.
Just send Jim the link and he can distribute it for us. So without that, but this is pretty standard from year to year. Do we have questions from the board on this budget request? Questions from the public or RTM members? And is there anything else you'd like to add as to level of services or anything else that might be relevant for us?
Well, we're accredited. We're one of the few of the 5. That's a big deal because the organization took about 10 years to get accredited by the state. So that's pretty impressive, and that happened on February 27, 2025. Well, it's a big deal. It's a collective effort of the group.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I guess with that, without any other questions, good luck and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is labor relations. I note that we're going to be hearing for the elections budget on Thursday, so that's a scratch for tonight. Margaret, welcome.
Thank you.
Page 20.
So there's no increase projected needed for next year's budget. We have 4 contracts that will be up for renewal in 2026.
Okay, so the request is for $93,600, and that primarily pays for legal fees for the negotiations.
That's correct, and any other special circumstances that happen during the year.
Okay. Questions on that budget from the board? Questions from RTM members and members of the public? Okay, I think we're good with that budget. We'll go on to pay the human resources on page 30.
Sure. The only large increase requested is under our Human Resource Information Systems Management System. We're requesting to purchase a recruitment and onboarding program for our ADP product that we've been using now for a while. Right now, recruiting is done in still a very infant approach to how we recruit relative to keeping track of people that apply for positions and how we respond to them. So this is a module part of the ADP workforce system that we would like to purchase. And we did some strong negotiations to get this amount of $13,000, including no increase in our contract for the next fiscal year for our main system.
Nice.
That's the only request I have.
Okay, so the request for HR is $379,561, increase of $20,000 $20,892. And other questions from the board on this?
Good.
Okay. Questions from RTM members, members of the public? Okay, Margaret, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Margaret.
Next up is Human Services. Page, detail on page 69 and 70. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, there's been some changes. Got a list on here I'm going to go over. If you notice, the fees and services had to reduce that this year and from last year. And there's several reasons for that. Specifically, we hired a billing system last year, and part of what they needed to do was also collect anything that was outstanding. So they made great progress on collecting that over the years. I think we've had it for about 3 years. So with that, they kind of caught up on a lot of the outstanding claims that we've had. There's still some there, but they've caught up incredibly on a lot of that. Another reason I have to reduce it because we have not a lot, but we have clinical staff turnover. And so when people leave, we have to hire them. And to hire them, it's not easy because there's just a lot of openings for social workers, especially like Yale, stuff like that, and they pay them more. So they're going to be going over there instead of us. So when we do get people, we get people that are new to the system. So we have to, we can't charge or bill different insurance companies because of what their credentials are. So first of all, they're coming in, they were relatively new. We're waiting for them to get the licensures that they need. And because of that, our billing kind of goes down, kind of suffers a little bit until we can get them to that point where they can get the better license. So that's why we had to drop that number. Of course, we made it up, or we tried to make some things up with the fund balance and the interest income. And we're trying to work on that so we could get people that are going to be coming in that have a lot of experience and a better, when I say better license, an LCSW, because the new people that are just coming out of schools have an LMSW. And so we can't credential them with different insurance companies. The other area is the seasonal part-time. We had a reduction there because we have an APRN. An APRN is an advanced practice registered nurse. And we had one on staff, but she decided that she didn't want to work anymore. And instead of replacing her, what we did was to move the people that she was seeing, the clients that she was seeing, to another contractor, which is another APRN. So there's a reduction in the seasonal and part-time. The other part is the other purchase services. There is an increase there of $43,000, and that happened because of a couple things. The medical director we have, is working through Yale. What he asked to do is to break away from Yale and work for us directly, which was good because we saved around $22,000 in hiring him directly and not through Yale. But we also had to increase the APRN that we had as our contracted service because we lost the other APRN who was part-time. So we had to give her more clients, and we had to increase her salary. So that's why there's going to be a difference in the other purchase services. So we're covering our bases, especially when we have to provide medications for the clients that we're seeing.
Okay. So the recap on this is there's revenues of $2,092,494 in this. This is a special fund, with the amount from taxation at $1,288,494, an increase of $62,200. $383,000, and the total expenditures are $2,092,494. Questions from the board?
Nope.
Questions from RTM members or members of the public? Mr. Toole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just would like to know the amount of the Human Services Fund balance, please. You have that, Peter?
I do, Frank, I do have that.
You do, good.
I know. What I was told is $1.4 million. No? That's what you told me the other day.
Yeah.
1.4, Frank.
Thank you very much, Peter.
You're welcome.
Is that audited?
That's a finance guessing.
Okay. Other questions? If not, you're all set, Peter.
Thanks.
Next up is tax collector, page 17. Welcome, Robert.
Good evening, everyone. One moment here. Again, thank you for allowing me to present my budget this evening to the board. So we'll get into the operating side here. So initially, under staffing, there's a contractual increase at 2.59 of $6,758. Going to overtime, there's no change in that. This year we added another line item for consulting services for $12,000. What we'd like to do is bring in a tax accounting consultant to align the finance and tax office. Again, there's in the balancing side, there are timings of, well, I should say the timing of collections. So advanced collections that happen sometimes roll over to the next fiscal year, and it creates an issue. So I'd like to get all of those squared away. And it's been going on for a bit of time, and Catherine's going to be part of your hair like me pretty soon if we continue on that. So we'd like to request that for this year. Purchase services, there's no change, $650. Again, that is for our QDS as well as any other services that we use, such as LexisNexis for skip tracing, as well as Invoice Cloud for our online payments. Bill processing, there is a decrease in that. What I've done is moved off to WPCA processing and postage to where it belongs. What we do is every year we've been handling that for them. We still do. We print the bills as long as, and the postage for them, but really that invoice really belongs to them, so we've decreased our outlay on that. Again, resident stickers, there's a decrease in that. That is from $7,500. That's going down to $3,750. We're launching our new program called MotoPass, and I'll talk about that in a little bit.
I'm not seeing that, Bob. I'm seeing the...
Yeah, so resident stickers, yeah, it's 75. You'll see an increase of 200%.
Right.
So that's down to about 15% now.
She wants the decrease.
So it's a decrease of $3,750 instead of $7,500.
Showing 7,500.
Right. So I'm decreasing that
Tonight.
Okay, tonight, got it.
Proactive.
Trying to stay ahead of us.
I cut myself.
Yeah, that's it. Am I bleeding yet? again, online services. So that, again, is the motor vehicle department for processing put-ons and takeoffs for motor vehicles, for delinquent taxes, along with, again, the invoice cloud piece. Postage is increased by $10,000, so it's $45,960. The reason for that is there's about an $8,000 increase in the announcements that we're going to be doing for the MotoPass once we get that put together. So there's about 21,000 postcards that we'll be sending out announcing that. Advertising and printing and binding, there's no change in that. Again, June, August, and December, we have to post in the newspapers for the timing of collections, and that is for obviously July, September, and January. So that is our legal notices. Supplies, no increase in that. I'm sorry, there's an increase of $150. So it's $3,752, which is about a 4.16% increase, and that's for general supplies. Again, there's a state fee at $350,000 for, again, MVD online. And then our memberships and conferences, there's no change in that. And our tax refund, there's a $275,000 this year from $429,000 and change. So there's a decrease in that. Jim and I discussed that, and again, we feel with the reval, most of the settlements have already been done. We have a few still hanging out there. What still will happen is the leasing programs will still be coming in. We'll still be doing refunds. Again, remember, there's a July 1 payment for automobiles. So you're paying that tax all year long for the entire year. You may have a rebate coming because you sold the car got totaled, or you traded the car in. So that is my budget as presented. And I have some highlights, Joe, if you'd like to hear that, or?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, just to give you an idea of where we sit today, as far as the collection rate from our system of record QDS, we're at 98.42. So our real estate collections are at 99.03 right now, and our personal property is at 96.63, and our sewer utility collection sits at 94.75. Last year's rate is 99.27, so we're going to try to match that or beat it. Our major focus has been on personal property collection enforcement. Just a few examples of what we've collected this year. These are GL years that go all the way to 23. So one account for 2016, I've collected $143,398 on. Another one from 2010, I've collected $19,890. Another unit, 2017, $27,400. Another one from 2016, $289,000, and one from 2011, which I have collected $100,000, and I'm still working through collecting an additional $103,000. So again, we're really focusing on obviously real estate and automobiles, but really the more difficult collections are the personal property side. We also brought in a third-party vendor to work on those motor vehicles and other small personal properties. So we brought them on in March of last year, and so far they've collected $115,000 going back to 2009. So remember, a lot of these automobiles don't exist anymore, and they've been successful in helping us collect that. So that is TaxServe, so they've done a great job. And the MotoPass that I was talking about earlier, getting the postcards out on the announcement, that's where, again, you're going to be able to order from your home beach stickers and transfer station passes. So you'll be able to do that 7/24, 365. We've done that in partnership with QDS. So it'll be a big relief for the folks in the tax office, putting those stickers together. The great thing about QDS is they're a system of record, so they know exactly whether an individual is delinquent or not. If they're delinquent, they're not going to be able to get it passed. They need to come into our office and speak with us. So,
when does that come online, Bob?
Well, we're just about ready to do some testing, and I think I can probably launch that by July.
Okay.
So we physically handed out about 11,000 stickers already this year, just to give you an example. And that's all I have.
Okay, great update. So the total request is $672,446 for the operating budget for the tax department. Questions from the board on this? Questions from RTM members of the public? Okay, all set.
Yeah, Joe, and I just have the capital there.
Capital is 86.
We've been talking about this, and really, the reason for the request really is it's a matter of function and security. Again, the counter really needs to be hardened. I did have the PD come in when I first got there just to take a look at what their thought was. Again, my background has been retail banking, so I've worked in the branches before. So it's something that we really need to look at. Again, the ability for a taxpayer to reach over the counter and pull money back, it's a very easy process for them to do that, or take anything else off that counter. Plus, it's not very conducive for the staff. There isn't any room for computer screens, so we can't update them. So it really needs to be looked at. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
So where do you envision this going? This is your request, is capital requested, looks like $100,000?
Yeah, so you could probably do it for less than that. Jamie and I had a discussion with the police department, with the modular units that they're using over at the firehouse. Possibly when they're done with those, that could be, coming over for the desk portion of that. But the counter would be something different. It would be a lot less than $100,000.
Right, but you have this under design versus construction?
Yeah, it went into the wrong slot. I apologize.
Okay, so this is really to get it done?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Questions on this capital request? Okay. Questions from RTM members of the public? All right, Robert, thank you.
Thank you.
JB, you have something to add on this?
I think I'm next.
Oh, catching up on you, okay.
Thanks.
So next budget is the executive budget on page 12.
Yep, all right, thank you. Requested budget is $347,779, an increase of $3,659, just a modest increase of 1.1%. Nothing to read about, in the paper. We have the regular wages and salaries, a 1.1% increase. That's for the executive assistant, the board clerk, 2.25%. That's for the Board of Selectmen's meeting, the part-time elected officials, which consists of the two selectmen, 2.1%, is when that would increase would take effect. The seasonal part-time help, which currently consists of the economic development coordinator as well as the blight officer, $1,094, which once again the 2.3% increase. On the non-personnel lines, there's everything is essentially held flat. Just the two organizations, Council of Governments, a minimal increase due to the dues of $200, while CCM saw a slight decrease of $12. Other than that, all other items are flat for non-personnel.
Okay. Thanks, Jamie. Again, it's, their total request is $347,779. Questions from the board on this budget? Questions from the public or RTM members? Okay, thank you. Next is the legal budget, James.
Yeah, so page 19 of the book, legal services, counsel and legal advice, that will be held flat at $270,000. That is for, obviously, general legal advice to the various departments where we need legal opinions or representation is paid out of that line item. Down below, you'll see expenses and claims and tax appeals. The tax appeals is for the attorney that represents the town during those efforts regarding that. So that is held flat as well for the next fiscal year at $150,000.
Okay, so the request for legal service budget is $450,000, unchanged from prior years. Questions from the board? Questions from the public or RTM members? Okay, thanks, Jamie. Next up is legislative on page 11. Lisa?
Thank you. Legislative ask is $20,432, of which personnel is up $249, and that's for the 3 stipends, 1 RTM moderator and 2 clerks. And the non-personnel, $9,100, is an increase of $1,200 in the advertising budget. This is kind of a moving target based on how the calendar falls with timing of the board, when the Board of Finance meets versus when the RTM meets, and which paper deadline we can meet. So, for instance, in this current year, we have 7 meetings. 4 legal notices ended up in the New Haven Register, which is much more exorbitant than the local Sound newspaper. So for the current budget, we are in a shortfall of about $580 with 3 more meetings to go. So maybe we might need to increase this from $1,200 to more, but I would imagine that the law ordinances budget will still have a little bit money left over, although rules and ordinances is currently actively vetting out, I think, 3 potential ordinances to be codified in the new year. So it's kind of a wing it line.
Okay.
Any questions?
Okay, so the request is for $20,432 for the legislative budget. Questions from the board? Questions from RTM members or members of the public? Okay, all set, Lisa. The next one is town clerk on page 18.
Thank you. The town clerk ask is $299,666, down by $9,100. Any questions? Just kidding. So you'll see that that big swing was in accumulated sick pay. We had a retirement of a member that was on staff for 30 years, and we had paid that out in August. So we have a fairly young staff now, and we won't have to worry about that for a while. The regular wages is 3 full-time town hall union employees. Their contractual increase for FY26 is 2.5%, which is unchanged over current year. On the non-personnel side, $29,800. I'm proposing to increase the professional development and memberships because I do have 3 new staffers that I'm working on getting up to speed on certifications, as well as they are eager to participate in conferences and professional development training, which is refreshing. And then office supplies and vital records, just small increases of $100 each on those line items, and those are offset by the decrease in purchase services.
Okay, the request is for $299,666 for this budget. Questions from the board? Questions from our TM members of the public? Okay. So,
Joe, I did want to just give a little update on revenues. So for this current year, we are on target to meet our revenue goals. In fact, we're year-to-date over by $63,500 on real estate conveyance. Granted, that's a real tough number to predict. We kept that number the same for FY 20, excuse me, I said 26, I meant 25, current year. For next year, we're keeping that number the same, but with the real estate market, it's very hard to predict. And then I talked about dog licensing earlier. We're at currently 1,283 dogs, up from last year at this time. That's all.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for tonight, we will again recess until Thursday, March 20th at 7 o'clock to begin the rest of the presentations. Thank you.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.